Secretary, we have a quorum? All right, we call the meeting to order. And by the way, if anybody wants to spread out, you can sit back here behind me, or of course, the only people that are in the audience in the room are those that have been invited. So if you would like to spread out, feel free to. I think we've got two participants on virtually. And so to Senator Simmons and Senator, I think Norwood's the other one, if they want to participate. If you want to speak, you need to unmute at that time and let me know if you've got anything to say. With that being said, we'll go right to the agenda today. I'm going to call up Senate Bill 2062 and recognize Senator Hill to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just the same type of bill that we typically file every year as a potential mechanism for funding the rounds of the Rural Fire Truck Acquisition Program. And this is just basically to have more than one way in the stream to figure out how to fund this program in the end. And the chairman has asked me to place a reverse repealer on lines 190, as this will be a work in progress on funding these fire trucks.
Thank you, Senator Hill. The reason for the reverse repealer is I think we've got a few things floating out there. Senator Michelle and his committee has something. He nods his head in affirmance. And just so we don't trip on each other along the way, we want to make sure that we don't end up passing two bills that may contradict one another in some way. So the motion is to add the reverse repealer. Any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And Senator Hill, your motion?
Motion will be title sufficient, due pass, committee sub.
Motion, title sufficient, due pass, committee sub. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The bill will be reported. I'll skip it for now. It's got something else in it, though, that we might need. Okay, next bill on our calendar is Senate Bill 2429. This is a study committee. It's something that I actually have proposed previously for the management of the state's fleet vehicles. One of the things that I have heard repeatedly is how some agencies have a lot of cars sitting around. Other agencies sometimes are scrambling for cars and trying to find the right cars to be able to go places. And so I'm not a huge fan of this. Probably something that could be handled internally, just switching it to one agency, and I think DFA is probably the agency. But to get input from all the agencies that use state vehicles, the idea here is to have people that can look into this. Let's be smart about our fleet management and quit, if we're wasting money, quit wasting money. Somebody reported to me a couple of years ago, a couple of agencies have cars that have tires that may be near dry rot because they don't get used. And I understand that some of the agencies like to use specific cars, so a car that we have is not getting utilized for one reason or another. I just think it needs a good study. I have a feeling we can save a lot of money for our state if we have an overall fleet management program, and so that's what this bill would do. I'm happy to yield any questions on it. If not, is there a motion? Motion is title sufficient, due pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We'll skip Senate Bill 2474 for the time being, and I want to go to Senate Bill 2834. This is a bill that is double referred, and this came to my attention in the off-season as it relates to some historic sites around our state that from time to time are able to get outside funds, and other states have done this. I think Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia are three that I remember, maybe one other, where they'll set up a little seed fund, and in this case it's going to be with Archives and History, where we put a little bit of money in it. And a lot of these corporations and other outside groups that want to help in the three areas that we've got identified are Native American sites, Civil War battlefield sites, and civil rights historic sites. And they're groups, a lot of times big corporations, that want to pump money into this, but they want some public participation. So my thought was to put some level of seed money, maybe $500,000 to $1 million, into the Department of Archives and History to allow companies to match dollar for dollar the funds that we have to help preserve some of these historic sites around our state. And I'll go through a few of the highlights. Again, the three areas are the ones that I mentioned: Native American, Civil War, and civil rights. Dollar for dollar matching funds is required. The grants from the fund shall not exceed 50% of the appraised value of the land. Any grant would have to be Number one, if the closing occurred no more than 12 months prior to that period. So somebody that's got a site that's been holding on to it for 20 years can't suddenly ask for state money to, on a match. And also, if there's an identifiable threat to the resource or compelling need to preserve the site at that time. Archives will establish the guidelines for applications, evaluation, and award of the grants. Eligible costs include the land acquisition, permanent protective interest, conservation easements, cost of appraisals, environmental reports, surveys, title searches, and other closing costs. And archives will prioritize those. So if you have several that are coming in, they'll prioritize that based on these categories: significance of the site, location, proximity to other protected lands, threat and integrity of features associated with the historical significance, financial and administrative capacity to maintain and manage the property, education, recreation, research, heritage, tourism, and other orderly community development. They may engage and enter into agreements with universities and colleges, historical societies, state and local agencies, and nonprofits to help in the assistance with this program. That's an explanation of the bill, and I'll be happy to yield to questions if anybody has any. If the motion is title sufficient to pass, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next up on the agenda is 2863, and this is again something brought to our attention recently from the State Department of Health. Y'all know that we had something in place for federal funds to be utilized during the pandemic for the last calendar year for Department of Health, and they were allowed to use federal funds to buy back comp time for some employees that worked in the Department of Health. I'm going to ask for an amendment in a minute because I want to make sure that these are employees whose activities are emergency response or on active emergency response orders in support of the COVID-19 response. We've got a lot of employees that are working some really high hours in response to this, and so their comp time is actually capped right now, but this would allow them to get paid at their regular rate for the additional time that they put in. It would be using federal funds, so there are no additional state dollars for this, but it allows them to draw that down for that purpose. And also in this bill's got two parts because it's a bit of a hybrid, but this will allow the State Fire Academy, they've received grants for some workforce development in the Fire Academy, and I think they've got 6 workforce development classes set up, but they don't have a special fund to receive those dollars to be able to implement the program. So this would create the State Fire Academy Workforce Program Fund, which will be the fund where those state grants will be used and those will be deposited. It also includes a provision, if y'all remember back when we did the BSATA bill or when we switched a lot of these special funds to general fund agencies, we got to put some language in this bill to make sure that we carve them out so that that would not be applicable to them for this particular measure. Be happy to yield to questions. Senator Delano.
Mr. Chairman, you spoke about the Department of Health's issues with the comp time. Would that also apply to MEMA or even National Guard for that sake?
The only two that have come, I think MEMA may be doing this, and you may know more about this than I do, but the only two that have come to see me to expand to include this, and this will go to June the 30th, as opposed to where it was capped previously at December 31 of this year, were Health and NDES. Now, I've gotten information from the Health Department. I have not received the pertinent information from unemployment. I do understand that the House may be looking at that, and I just need more information before I'm willing to kind of sign off in support of what unemployment's doing. I know unemployment had a big rush last year when everybody filed for unemployment. I don't know what their rush is. And again, MEMA,
I don't know. I was going to find out through our budget stuff.
let me see. Corbin may have some information that's just helpful. He thinks that MEMA might be able to do it already, and maybe that's why they haven't come to see me about
I'll follow up.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Delano. Other questions about the bill? If not. Oh, I do have an amendment. Thank you, Counselor. The amendment would be on line 20 to strike whose activities are deemed essential to agency operations for responding to COVID-19 and include who are on active emergency response orders in support of the COVID-19 response. Would that be right? Would it be who are on activity emergency response orders in support of the COVID-19 pandemic instead of response? Let's change that last word, response to pandemic. Any questions about that amendment? We want to make sure that we're not paying comp buyback time to somebody who's just happens to be sitting, at the desk doing their usual work. This is just for those that are in the emergency response. If there are no questions, do I have a motion to amend? Senator Polk moves to amend to include that language. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Also on the final passage, Senator Polk, you have a motion? Motion title sufficient to pass. Motion is title sufficient to pass committee sub, I think is what I heard. Did y'all hear that? All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Let's go to, before I potentially come back to 2474, we're going to take up the deficit bill. Just for your recollection, and for some of you that may be a first-timer, Senator Williams, we typically do a deficit bill at least once, if not twice, during the session for those things that may have gotten away for one reason or another. Maybe there was unnecessary or unanticipated expense somewhere along the way. Sometimes there are things that we know will be deficits. We just don't know how much money to plug in when we set the budget in the previous year. And so obviously we got to take care of those. And there's some of these that we're going to take care of now, or at least I hope we will. If you look at this bill, 2879, there are several categories that would need to be included in this first round. First is, you'll see $5.6 million in capital expense funds and another $500,000 in special funds that will be used to take care of student financial aid. They are about $6.1 million behind where they need to be. So in order for our students at our universities that qualify not to get their scholarships pro rata reduced, we would need to fund at that level. They do have $500,000, as I mentioned, in special fund authority, so we're going to allow them to utilize that. And this $5.6 million in capital expense funds will be for the MTAG, the HELP, and the MESG scholarships. Those are your tuition assistance grants, your higher education learning program HELP, and the MESG is your Eminent Scholars Grant program, and that covers all three of those. Next, those are sections 1 and 2. Section 3 is $3,064,417. This again is capital expense funds that will be used to pay for CTE student attainment assessments with Mississippi State, and also it fully funds their research and curriculum unit. They're the ones that set up the curricula for our VOTEX and technical assistants, and this also makes sure that they meet their maintenance of effort requirements with the Carl Perkins Act. Their Section 4 is $512,413 in capital expense funds for Attorney General's payments of legal bills, and those are in cases. $129,680 is in the Olivia Y case. Most of you know what that is. Those are continuing fees that we have every year to pay for monitoring enforcement work of our DHS and CPS for our children. We've got $180,963 that's payment to the Bernini Law Firm for the litigation on the prisons. There's, I think, 2 different cases, Amos versus Taylor and Waddell versus Taylor. We've got $22,412 payment to State Counsel, Phelps Dunbar, excuse me, and that's in the U.S. versus State of Mississippi case, deals with ADA compliance with community mental health centers. $36,203 payment to also Butler Snow, which is in the case that I need to get Senator Thomas down here. That's the District 22 case from last year or year before last. Payment to Butler Snow. $65,000 payment to the Bradley, Arant, Bolt, and Cummings law firm in the Gunn versus Reeves case. $78,155 Butler Snow for IRS claims against the state as it relates to the Affordable Care Act. $625,000 in capital expense funds. to DPS for helping to speed along our driver's license stations. So we've got personnel in there to create, or eliminate the backlog that we've got there. Additionally, $111,667 for DPS for the death investigators that are being proposed by DPS. They want, most of you know this probably, but we've got a backlog on medical exams right now at the crime lab or the forensics lab, and they want to hire a few of these death investigators who can help speed that process along. These are trained coroners and the like that will come in and do death investigations, and they don't have to bring in, right now they're having to bring in, I think, the medical examiners from out of state, and they're paying $5,000 or $6,000 a pop. This will actually save money in the long run, I think, and it'll help eliminate, again, the backlog they have there. Section 7 is $315,700 in special funds to the Fire Academy to conduct the workforce development courses. And then Section 8 will put in $2.3 million of spending, or special fund spending authority for the potential new fire trucks in counties around the state. So that's all the items in the deficit bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. Questions? Senator Wiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going to Section 4 of the bill, that's the money's coming out of the capital expense fund. And then line 73, Gunn versus Reeves, is that the case that was just decided by the Mississippi Supreme Court? And correct me if I'm wrong, it was my recollection that the Senate was not part of that. Am I correct in that?
You are correct in that.
And yet, the way this is written right now, we're having to pay for that out of the capital expense fund.
You are correct.
I would have would you consider it a friendly amendment? Let me ask this. Doesn't each chamber have its own budget that, on the appropriation side?
Not technically, no.
So when we do the budget, there's not a Senate line item and a House line item?
No. But I'll entertain your motion if that's what you're trying to make.
Well, that is what I'm trying to do, and my motion, I thought we had that, but apparently we don't. It was that the House be responsible for that because the Senate was not didn't have a participation in that. And so my amendment, friendly amendment, was going to be that it come out of the House's budget of that.
There's not a separate House budget, but you can make your amendment.
Okay, then did it not come out of capital expense, that this be paid for by the House of Representatives?
Do you want, is your amendment that we just eliminate this item from the deficit?
Or that's my other option, that yes, that we eliminate this out of the, but.
If that's your motion,
That's
I'll
my motion.
entertain you. You've heard Senator Wiggins' motion to remove item,
Really strike, my motion would be to strike line 73 through 74.
let me get to it. Okay, the motion that you have is to strike item 73, 74. Let me make sure that doesn't change our overall, may need to change another.
Okay,
Yeah, line 57, that's the total amount. So your motion would be to strike those two lines and to amend line 57 to reflect that change, correct?
correct. That would be it.
Okay, any questions about the motion? Senator DeBar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Senator Wiggins.
Yes.
Or the chairman. These legal expenses, are they for the plaintiff or the defendant in this lawsuit?
That's for the defendant.
Okay. All right. And just a comment, I will note that just from my time on the Rules Committee, there is a House fund, a Senate fund, and a joint fund. And so it's my understanding that these, this amount of $65,000 could be paid out of the House fund rather than the joint or the capital expense fund.
Well, the fund that you're referencing is the funds that we allocate as part of the legislative operations. So that's, You're actually talking about taking out of the House's legislative fund for next year?
They have the money to pay for it. They have a fund that they could use if that's what this committee.
So you would support Senator Wiggins' motion?
I would support the amendment, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about the motion?
If I may, to Senator
Sure.
DeBar, so they, sitting in this fund, they have that 65,000 right now. Is that what you're saying?
They have money that's appropriate to them, and they can spend it as they deem appropriate, I believe.
And if we remove this, they can choose to use that?
It-
We don't
it's
have
an-
to put that into the legislation?
It could be, but with your amendment, it takes it out, and they will be responsible for it, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions about the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That bill will be amended accordingly. Any other questions on the bill? Then I'll entertain a motion, title sufficient to pass committee sub. Thank you, Vice Chair. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Hang on one second. I'll ask the committee's indulgence while I look at one thing on 2474. All right, I think that'll cover us for today. I'll talk with Senator Blackwell about Senate Bill 2474, and we may bring it back up Tuesday, but maybe not. But there's some other language in there that I want to look at outside of that bill. So I will entertain a motion to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you.